One time I had a guy, the rainbow was starting to run, and he polished it off, and I let a new rainbow run. And I said, you can't do that. And he said, you mean I only get one shot at the rainbow? I said, yeah.
One shot at the
Only one shot at the rainbow. See anything?
No. I see some color at
I
Doris'
see-
eye.
Blue and a little straw to the right.
Put about a ½ inch of water in a pot. At least we don't have any more red heat in it. That was a mistake that will make it work. Now we'll see what color we got. Here's a straw. See it? No? Okay, no!
Yeah.
See.
Okay, see. Polish it up, dude. We're not gonna do the other end. Just gonna do the head.
Thanks, sir.
Yeah. Guaranteed till I leave the premises. I was gonna work on that, but I'm gonna take a break.
But after your break, I'd like to help you finish that tool we started this morning.
That one?
Uh-huh.
What time is it?
Oh,
3.
about 3.
We'll get it, I think we can get it hauled out.
And you could stay away breaking or tell a story.
I'm sorry.
Did you tell these guys about Victor Vera? I know she's probably heard the story, but
Victor?
Oh,
that is the
You
most
guys know
amazing
about
story.
Victor?
no,
You guys know about Victor Vera?
No.
sure don't.
You could
Well, on
have
Madera Street, just off of Agua Fria, there used to be a huge building that was a Southwest Spanish Craftsman Furniture Factory. And at one end of the furniture factory, they had a small blacksmith shop, a complete blacksmith shop. And I was still shoeing horses. I had made a few fire screens, I had made a few fire tools, I'd made a few branding irons, but I didn't consider myself a blacksmith. So I popped in there one day. I found out there was a blacksmith shop, and there was Mr. Vera, who was about my height, kind of stocky built. He was about probably in his early 80s. He was working 4 hours a day making hardware for the furniture company. And occasionally he'd make a little gate or a grill if somebody commissioned it. So I asked if I could work with him. If I came in every now and then, like 2 days a week or whatever. And he said, yeah, you could help me. But he helped me more than I helped him. He taught me how to oxyacetylene weld, how to arc weld, how to make a scroll forming jig, how to make scrolls, how to collar. He taught me a lot of stuff. So I asked him what his story was, and he said that he was brought up in a blacksmith shop in San Luis Potosi, Mexico, which is about 800 miles south of the border. It's way down there. So his dad and his uncle, I think, ran the blacksmith shop where he was brought up. And during the Mexican Revolutionary period, when everything was in anarchy and all the gangs were riding around on horseback wanting to rule Mexico, he and a buddy wanted to get out of Mexico. They walked. They didn't have horses. They walked north toward the United States. And they got in Chihuahua. And this big gang of horsemen rode up on him. By the way, he said they saw people hanging from trees all the way up. It was that kind of a period of history. It was real scary. So this gang of horsemen rode up and they pulled out their pistolas. They asked him which gang they were rooting for. And they didn't know what to say, and
The one that keeps me alive.
Victor said, Pancho Villa, question mark? And he said, good, I'm Pancho Villa. And he said, what can you do in the way of work? He said, I was brought up in a blacksmith shop. Can you fix pistols? Can you repair them? He said, yeah. Can you break into strong boxes, safes to get money? Can you break open the strong boxes? Yes. Get him a horse, boys. He's riding with us. So he was a prisoner of war. He said it wasn't fun. I mean, it sounds like a big adventure. But he did this under duress. So they actually would ride into a small town, he said. They would go to a store or a bank, and they, with chisels and hammers, they made him open these safes. They get the money. He fixed their pistols for them, sharpened their knives, and all that kind of stuff. And then he and, I don't know what happened to his buddy, but he met another kid, and they escaped. They were in their teens. They escaped. They got across the border. They were down near Brownsville, Texas. They didn't know exactly where they were, but they got a job in a boiler factory. And in those days, boilers were riveted together. They were water and air tight, but they were riveted. He said that's the hardest work he's ever done in his life. Being inside of a big boiler, bucking up rivets, hammer and rivets. So he said to his buddy, there's got to be a better way. And they said, well, we heard there were steel mills up in Gary, Indiana. Let's get up at the Gary, we'll work in the steel mills. So he did. They rode the rails. They got to Gary, Indiana. They got jobs in the steel mill. And he told me this. He says, sometimes a man would fall into the melt. And the foreman says, just a little more carbon, boys. Keep on working. And he had a weird accent. He had a Croatian, Eastern European accent. And I asked him, I said, how come you have an Eastern European accent? And he said, because I was at the steel mill and I learned from all the Serbs and Croatian, Estonian, Latvian, Lithuanian. Of course I have an Eastern European accent. In World War II, he was 4F, meaning they couldn't get in the Army or Navy. But he wanted to help the war effort, as they called it in those days. So he applied at this factory that made war material. And he didn't know quite what he was getting into, but they said they got all the guys who applied in this one room, and the foreman came in and said, "Who has metal experience?" He was the only one with metal experience. Raised his hand. Gave him a big sheaf of blueprints. They said, "Torpedoes. Make torpedoes." That's all he got. So he made torpedoes for the remainder of the war. He was also a silversmith. He made, before he came to the United States, he used to make charro silver, like little buttons
Uh-huh.
and decorate the spurs with silver. So he knew silver work. He also became a plumber somewhere along the line. So we dedicated our book to him. We called it, the book is dedicated to Victor Vera, man of metal. Pancho Villa's gunsmith, machinist, plumber, welder, blacksmith, you name it, he did it all. So that's the story of Victor Vera. The other part of the story is, the woodworkers told me that it was all bullshit, that he made up that story. So I believed him, because when he told me the story, he cried, real tears, because he was a prisoner of war and it brought back, they were holding a pistol at his head. He was a kid. So I sent the story into anvilfire.com. It's in the internet. Anvilfire.com, stories. Look it up. Just what I told you guys. Well, the head guru, the alpha guru of anvilfire.com didn't believe the story, because he's got on the computer and looked up Victor Vera. And he couldn't find his name anywhere. And the ones he did find were all young. They weren't they hadn't passed away yet. So he wrote back, he wrote me an email and said, "I can't find anything out about Victor Vera." And I wrote back and I said, "Why should you? He's an old blacksmith. Why the hell should he be on the internet?" This is a true story, a personal story. To hell with being on the internet. So anyway, he never did quite believe me. So about 4 years ago, a lady from Las Cruces, New Mexico called me up, and she said, "Did you write the article about Victor Vera for anvilfire.com?" And I said, "Yes, I did." And she said, "He's my father." Boy, it caught my breath. I said, "Really?" And she said, "Yeah, I'm 80 years old now." I said, "Is that a true story?" She said, "Oh, yeah. He told us that many, many times around the dinner table." That's very same story. Oh, he was also a musician. He was a Renaissance man, Victor. So I got in touch with Jock Dempsey, the webmaster, and I said, "I just heard from his daughter." And she said the story's real and he's real, so there. Anyway, I got to work with him a short while. His wife became ill, and she was from San Antonio. And when Spanish people get ill, they want to go home. So he took her to San Antonio, and I never heard from him after that.
That gives me something to look up in San Antonio.
Yeah, she would have been Mrs. Vera, Senora. Well, anyway, the daughter told other relatives who were mostly in Texas at that time, and they got in touch with me. "Tell us more about our uncle." You know, they wanted to know about their uncle. I said, "I told you almost everything I know." One cute thing he told me was they had the big pear-shaped bellows, in his shop that went up and down. They were huge. He said when they were going to do a heavy welding job or a heavy blacksmithing job, when I was a little boy, they put me on top. And I was the weight. So when the top bellows board went up, he was the extra weight that made it come down faster. I can just picture that. He said they founded, at their blacksmith shop, they poured the church bells for the old church. And they hung them with rawhide. And when he went back to visit, they were still there.
That last a
Wet
long time.
rawhide, you know, it shrinks.
Right.
He went back when he was in his late 70s, went back to San Luis Potosi, and nobody believed it was Victor Vera, because he left when he was a kid. He looked up people that he thought might know him. They said, "You're not Victor, he's gone. He's dead. You're just saying you're Victor." He couldn't find anybody that believed him. How disappointing. Came back to the U.S.
Wow.
Anyway, that's so much for that story.
His destiny was greater.
I guess we won't need this little pipe.